Hello everyone, I'm D, and welcome to Underwhelming Upkeep. Quick recap, Warmachine Mk4 is a full-on reboot of the Warmachine tabletop wargame. This means to play in their prime, air quotes, setting, you can't use older models. Since mostly everyone is starting from the top, it means that we can go on this journey together. Welcome to Hobby 101, and this video is kind of like a preamble. I'm making it more to set the stage for someone who might want to follow along with me on this journey. I mean, I've already done this and learned these lessons and have these supplies, but if you're new, you won't. I know where I'm starting out, but where the hell do you start? Personally, I have a small leg up because I'm coming from other games, so I have a lot of the basics, but I want to cover the hidden costs to tabletop war games and the legit basics of this hobby so you can get your own miniature from the box to the tabletop, and it looking great. Now, when you go into a store or you're at a convention and you see that big shiny game or something like a model kit or whatever, and you go, I want that. But you're just starting out. There's one heck of a hidden cost to this game that most people don't know. The true barrier to entry. Most people either forget to tell you about it, or some companies don't want to tell you about it because it might stop you from pulling that trigger and buying that kit or that starter set. And that's basic supplies. Tools like your snips, files, hobby knives are must-haves. There's small mounting costs also that just are always kind of there. Glues, primers, brushes, paints, sealers, basing material, and storage. These are all things that you're not normally told about when you start this hobby. And most of this I already have sorted, but I want to bring it up to you so you know that it's a thing. So I've built my toolbox over the years. My snips are from Games Workshop, and I don't advise that for starters. The current set that they sell are not amazing compared to the ones that I got in the past. I would honestly say that jumping into a different company might be a better idea. My files and my hobby knife are from Walmart. No joke, I went to the home improvement section and just got a set of cheapo files there, and my hobby knife is just a standard hobby knife in the craft section at Walmart. You can go any route you want, but if I would say you want a quick jumping in point, go to Amazon and search Gundam Toolkit. And you can find bundles for roughly $20 to $30, even more, and that comes with 90% of the tools you're going to need. If you're wanting to get more quality items though, and you want to dip into a more costly brands, Tamiya is amazing. So I'm looking at getting and upgrading to a set of Tamiya snips myself. You don't really need snips for this game, but in modeling in general, they're super helpful. Those are the big three: snips, files, blades. Snips will remove models from sprues, or runners as some people call them, but we don't have those in this game. But if you do Warhammer, you'll need them. Small files help you remove flashing or mold lines. Hobby knife does the same thing, and you'd actually be really shocked what the back of your hobby knife can remove. You might see tools like mold line removers. Those are nice. They do the job. Honestly, I've never seen a mold line I can't remove with the back of my hobby knife. For this miniature war game in general, though, we'll just mostly need a hobby knife and files. Snips won't need it because, like I said, they're 3D printed, so you don't really have to snip them off of sprues or runners. I'm kind of honestly hyped for that. It'd be interesting to have a kit basically already in sub-assembled state, because you don't have to build like 8 different pieces for the body. The body's already there. But if you, like I said, if you're getting into other war games, you definitely want to get a pair of snips. A model has a basic progression to go from box to tabletop ready. There's assembly, priming, painting, basing, and sealing. That's how my personal workflow is. Others might do it different ways. Priming and painting are very close to the same thing, but to me, I put them in their own areas because they require their own mental space to be in. I have to get up from my table and take it outside and prime it, and that requires different energy. It creates a break in the workflow. And I can assemble a model, and then, like I said, getting up to prime it, different energy. It's a whole new area that I need to go to do something. So sometimes I will spend a lot of time doing one step over and over again. So assembling multiple models or projects at once to not mess with that workflow. Same with priming. I'll take that pile of plastic and set up a priming rotation so I can spray, side to side, repeat. Spray 1, spray 2, spray 3, etc. Quick break. Here's a learn from my mistake moment, and that is the glue that you use. I like to use gel controlled super glue because it's thicker, flows slower, and dries pretty well. Some glues can expand and just fuck everything up, i.e. types of Gorilla Glue are not meant for modeling. If you use a brand you've never touched before, I highly advise to test it on something you don't mind messing up. Also, with other games, there are other options besides super glue. 40K, as an example, has plastic glue. It does nothing to your skin, you can't like glue your fingers together, but it does melt plastic to each other. So what it essentially does is it takes the plastic surfaces that it's touching, both of them, and melts them a little bit, and then they fuse together as it dries. Um, don't have the model primed because obviously it has to be plastic and plastic. If you're going to do sub-assemblies, plastic glue could be a problem for you because you've already primed part of it, and when there's paint to paint, plastic glue is not going to work. I don't know if plastic glue works on resin, 3D printed resin. I guess I could do a test later on and find out. But yeah, if you're at your local game store and they take you to the Warhammer 40K area and they want to sell you plastic glue, luckily that's not the trip I fell into. The trip I fell into was Gorilla Glue expanding and messing up a model. But if they try to sell you plastic glue from their hobby section, it's a good chance it's not going to do a damn thing. Don't do it. So I kind of touched on it. There's something called assembly versus sub-assembly. What the fuck is sub-assembly? Remember, I'm writing this from the point of view of someone who's fresh into this hobby. For some, it's better not to assemble the full miniature. You can keep it in parts or sections that you can reach with ease when you paint, so you're not flailing over the mini. Recently, I printed the prisoner model from this line, and she's got a set of arms and a sword that come detached from her. If I wanted to, I could have left those off and just primed each piece individually, and then this way when I went to go paint her, that sword and those arms, like the arms wouldn't get in the way of me painting other parts of the mini. And for someone like me, it's not a big deal. I know how to paint around it. But if you're newer, it becomes a problem. At least it becomes frustrating. It's not necessarily a problem. You're just like, oh, I can't get to this part because of the damn arm. And you're flailing over the damn thing like, wacky waving inflatable arm tube man. That's up to you. I would highly advise doing sub-assemblies if you're new to painting. It'll make your life a lot easier. Just dry fit the model before you do it so you see what happens once it's fully assembled. Now, another learn from me moment. In 40K, there was a model for the Death Guard called the Plague Burst Crawler, and it has this very gorgeously interior designed area of one of the wheel wells where you can see the mechanisms, you can see the engine, you can see all this stuff. And I spent about 8 hours painting both of them, only to find out that later in the kit that there were these nice armor panels that just covered 90% of it. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to leave them off. And then the more I looked at it, I'm like, it just looks stupid with them off. So I ended up putting them on anyways and just felt super dumb. And I took that as a learning lesson from there. You always dry fit your model. Fun times. So we've assembled our model and we want to paint it. Next is primer. Do we need to use primer? God, yes. Please do not paint without primer. Paint has an issue going on directly onto plastic or resin. It just doesn't work right. It doesn't flow. It doesn't cover properly. Primer helps cover the model and a light layer of paint that's meant to bond to whatever the base material is, and it's a good starting point. Primer can also help change how paints work. Contrast paint is a great example. You can take a contrast paint or even regular base paints most of the time, and depending on what your primer is, they'll look completely different. Black base primer is really good for shadows, white over primer if you want highly bright colors, or even metal primers are out there. And then it like a Talisar blue as a contrast paint on top of like metal primers gives it a very good candy apple, or not a candy, like a metallic car type sheen. It's really good. And then there are other things that you can work on, like zenithal highlighting or with primer, and I'm not going to go over that in detail. The main point is I want to say is test your primer. If you spent $3 at Walmart, which is very viable, I've done that, that primer works perfectly fine, or you go drop $25 at Games Workshop or your local hobby store on GW Primer, even though it's higher quality primer, test it. Test it every time before you use it. You want to hold it about a foot away from you and test it on something, a cardboard box, a plastic bag, whatever, because there are many factors that can fuck up a prime job. And a fucked up prime job can damn near kill a mini. Like once you've messed up your prime job, the damage can be so extreme that your options are to either try to strip it with simple green or some other safe stripping agent for plastic or resin, or just trash it. That's how bad a prime job can do to a mini. Prime is that dangerous, so you need to handle with care. Things like distance that you spray from, humidity of the location, the temperature on which it's drying can all affect how your primer comes out. So test it, test it, test it. Before you spray down an $80 plus miniature or army or whatever, test it. It like army painter. At one point, there was a type of army painter formula that if it got too hot, aka sitting in a warehouse, it would come out and just totally flake the model, and it would look crusty, and the texture was bad, and paint wouldn't adhere to it properly. It was a huge defect issue, and it's not necessarily just Army Painter that has that problem. I've seen GW cans come out that way. So you don't have a guarantee that that primer that you just bought is good until you've tested it. So test your armor, or test your primer before you spray your army. Next is painting. Honestly, just do it. Let's set a realistic expectation here. You will not be good when you start. You will not look like the website image or the box image. You don't set the expectation that you will. With anything, the best ways to get better at it is just to do it. YouTube painting tutorials if you want. Use contrast or speed paint like I do. Just get in there and just do it. It's only paint. You can always strip it off with stuff like simple green. I mentioned that. You can get that at Walmart, or something that's plastic safe, like don't use acetone. That'll melt the damn thing. And then just start over if it's too far gone. Worst case, if you paint something and you can't strip it or you can't get it to look the way that you want, buy a new one. I mean, it sucks, but hey, if it's not at the level that you want it to be at, just get a new one. I would just advise, if you're scared, just YouTube tutorials. Dive down that rabbit hole. Practice stuff. If you have a local games workshop or others, they sometimes have demo minis that you can start with. Buy a cheaper D&D mini for like $5 at your local gaming store. If you want to practice a technique that has really good results and is very simple to do, I would say slap chop. It's a good starting place. You just got to practice dry brushing, and once you get decent at dry brushing, slap chop's really good. Really good results. Finally, we get basing. Basing to me is a lot like painting. There are 3D base inserts that you can use to make your stuff look great, or you can use texture paint. Or you can just use good old white PVA school glue and sand. I'm not even kidding. You just water down some PVA glue, paint it on your base with a brush you don't mind losing, dip it in some dirt, and then shake it off. Some people will then even go a step further. They'll take that and they'll prime that base, and then they'll paint the sand to the texture that they want. And just like painting, just Google/YouTube stuff. Basing is a huge deal. It can take your miniature from looking like a 4 to a 10 real quick. And there are products to help you cheat. Army Painter does a great line of little tufts of grass that you can put on bases that just help make them pop. Highly advise the $10 investment on those. You know, if you do the little dirt technique, you just pop a little tufts of grass on there. Looks good. Finally, use a good sealer. Same as your primer, test it, test it, test it. A bad sealer can fuck up your paint job. Is it glossy? Is it matte? Does it go cloudy? That can happen if the humidity is really high. All of these things that you need to worry about when you seal it. Now, why do you seal it? Well, your fingers and people's bodies and all that, we produce oil. And when you're play or moving your models around, if you constantly bump and rub the same area, like you always pick up the model from like the head or whatever, that paint over time is going to go away because of your body oils. But when you put a layer of varnish or sealer on it, you prevent that from happening. Even bumping in transport, like if you're using foam and the model rubs a certain way whenever you're driving against the foam, or the magnet rack if it's rubbing against a different model, then both of those models could be damaged, but a sealer will save it. So just seal the damn mini. Now you've done all that. Ta-da, you're done. You have a full army after you repeated the process over and over, and you painted everything and it's based and it's good to go. But you still need storage. So definitely think about that too. We'll get to storage in a little bit. But why did I outline all of the rest of this? Because when you're looking at that shiny box and when I want that, did you stop and think about everything that we just talked about? You need tools and glue and primer and brushes and paint and sealer and basing materials, and you need to protect all that, and you need storage for that project. And while mid-production, like little storage boxes, like the tackle boxes that you can put parts into different areas, but you also need to be able to store the army. Amazon's good for this. There's also battle foam, stuff like that. There's army bags, there's magna racks, but you didn't think that cost either, most likely. Just for the primer, paint, and sealer alone, a basic cost of an army I'm looking to start is roughly $200. That's without tools because I have mine. Let's overshoot it and say $250 for tools and paints just to get from box to tabletop if you're using the stuff I am. Granted, this is using Games Workshop paints and like 2 sets of Games Workshop primers because I'm going to use black and white to zenithal a lot of it, and other things I want to do to get the effects that I want. And that's not normal. You could get away probably with a cost of $100 to $150 with ease, but still, when you're starting up, did you think that there was a hidden $100 to $250 cost before you could get that shiny box on the table looking good? Most likely not. And that's not even factoring in storage. The bag/magnet system I want from like battle foam is $250. Now I'm looking at a cheaper one on Amazon that's $130 and debating on doing that, but still, that's still a hidden cost, and that's without the magnets themselves. I would also need to buy the magnets. And now my introductory cost for this army before I've gotten a single figure is close to $450. Granted, do I need that $250 bag? No, that's my choice. YouTube, again, is your friend, and you can find good tutorials on how to make cheap magnet-friendly storage boxes. Duncan Rhodes, an amazing individual who used to work for Games Workshop, who went off to form Two Thin Coats, has a tutorial where he just buys some little magnetizable sheets, glues them in a plastic box that stacks on top of each other, works perfectly fine. Amazon has foam bags for about $50. They have up to like $100. You can get some pretty good ones. But you will need some storage option at some point. 1, to keep the army safe, and 2, to transport it. I mean, heck, you could technically just use a cookie sheet and install magnets on your thing if you want, or a shoebox and some foam. I mean, really, it's your call on how detailed you want to go here, but the point is it's there. There's still that cost. There's hidden costs to any miniature games, not just Warmachine or Warhammer. It's just part of the hobby, and some enjoy it quite a bit, myself included. But if you're starting out fresh, now you know what to look out for. All right, I'm ready to get off my soapbox. Hopefully you've learned something from all this rambling, and if you're new to tabletop wargaming, and this just sets a proper expectation about what the actual fuck you're about to get into, because not everyone even knows or thinks about this, and it's there, so keep it in mind. Now it's YouTuber housekeeping time. Now this is my first video on this channel / project, so if you've come this far, thank you for watching the video. I really do mean it, and if you want to follow along with me, subscribe. Duh. Or if you could leave a like, that would help as well. And let's leave the video for a question. You know, they want that viewer interaction. Now, I've fallen into a few traps, from bad glue to prime jobs or sub-assembly snafus. Have you ever done anything like that? Do you have any hobby traps or mistake you've made? Let me know down in the comments. Your story could save somebody else from repeating your mistake. Have a great one, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.